Today, the Scottish Government published its first annual statement following recommendations from the National Advisory Council on Women and Girls. It describes the actions the Government has taken to improve the lives of women and girls and towards gender equality. There remains much to do to tackle the challenges, barriers and dangers that women and girls still face, but the Scottish Government is committed to accelerating equality. And at the end of this afternoon's debate, my hope is that members will recognise the range of positive measures that we've taken towards gender equality in Scotland, and many of which would not have been possible without the cross-party support of the Chamber. The UN Sustainable Goals tell us that gender equality is not only a fundamental human right, but a necessary foundation for a peaceful, prosperous and sustainable world. Reflecting that, equality for women and girls is a priority for this Government and at the heart of our vision for a fair and a prosperous Scotland. The Advisory Council on Women and Girls was established in 2018 to advise Government and others on what more we need to do to achieve gender equality. It makes recommendations to the Scottish Government, which we accepted and are implementing. Latterly, it has focused on accountability, scrutinising how we are delivering on its recommendations. The publication of today's annual statement is a recommendation of the Council, intended to support greater accountability. And I want to extend my thanks to the Council and to the Empowering Women's panel for their work to scrutinise our progress. While I'm pleased to discuss the range of important work that this Government is taking forward, it remains clear that there is much more to do, and we are determined to deliver for women and girls and to address inequality wherever it arises. In 2021, we published our first Women's Health Plan, and we are currently working on the next phase, which we intend to publish later this year. Our first plan led to the appointment of Scotland's first Women's Health Champion, a new women's health platform on NHS Inform, the development of new endometriosis care pathways, greater choice and access to contraceptives for women at community pharmacies, and the creation of specialist menopause services in every mainland health board. And I'll give
Duncan Glancy.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for taking the intervention. It's on the point on the Women's Health Plan, and I'm wondering whether the Cabinet Secretary agrees with me that the situation for disabled women, particularly in Glasgow, to access cervical smear tests and the difficulty in making sure they've got accessible rooms for those, including in GP surgeries, is not an acceptable position, and that more should be done to support GPs in the NHS to make sure that their services are accessible to disabled women.
Cabinet Secretary, and give the time back.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Can I thank Pam Duncan Glancy for that comment? And she points to, and probably not for the first time today, the discussion which is exceptionally important that's about intersectionality and the fact that we no longer can and should just be talking about women, but we need to recognise the additional challenges and barriers that are facing women, whether it's disabled women or whether it's black minority ethnic women or other women that they have in facing and accessing public services. And she raises a very important point there, Presiding Officer, which I would agree is unacceptable. Presiding Officer, in the next phase of the plan, timely access to gynaecology services will be a priority. And we've allocated over £8.8 million to health boards to target long waiting times for gynaecology and expect this to deliver significant improvements in the coming year. In addition, work is underway to target cervical cancer, identifying steps that we can take to eliminate it in our lifetimes. We've invested over £53 million since 2018 to fund access to free period products across a range of settings. And through the Period Products Free Provision Scotland Act 2021, Scotland became the first country in the world to enshrine access to free period products in law. We continue to target all forms of violence against women and girls through our world-leading strategy Equally Safe, and by strengthening the laws that enable us to respond robustly to perpetrators and to protect women and girls. In 2018, the Scottish Parliament passed the bill which became the Domestic Abuse Scotland Act 2018, creating a specific offence of domestic abuse that covers both physical and psychological abuse and making it easier to prosecute coercive and controlling behaviour. Today, another bill, the Criminal Justice Modernisation Bill, currently at stage 3, proposes to create a statutory framework for Scotland's first national multi-agency domestic homicide and suicide review model. We've taken action to create a trauma-informed process for people who have experienced sexual violence, including the Forensic Medical Services Victims of Sexual Offences Scotland Act 2021. The Act provides a statutory basis for health boards to provide person-centred, trauma-informed forensic medical services for people who have experienced rape or sexual assault. Since 2017, we have invested over £17 million to enable sexual assault response coordination services to be provided in every health board area. And, Presiding Officer, we have also increased public sector pay in Scotland, despite significant constraints in our budget. Increasing women's pay helps to reduce child poverty, one of the Scottish Government's 4 priorities. In 25 to 26, we are investing £155 million to enable an increase in the pay of adult and children's social care workers in commission services to the new real living wage rate of £12.60 per hour. This overwhelmingly benefits women, who make up the majority of the workforce. Scotland also has the most generous childcare offer in the UK. Parents of all 3- and 4-year-olds and eligible 2-year-olds can access up to 30 hours of funded childcare each week in school term time. Supporting families by providing quality, affordable and accessible childcare supports women in work and keeps families out of poverty. I'll give way to Megan
Gallagher.
For giving way on the point of childcare, because there are councils right across the country who are not actually allowing eligible 2- and 3-year-olds to access 1140 hours free funded childcare until the term after they turn 3 years old. So does the Cabinet Secretary realise that that is a problem, and we do need to fix it if we are going to try and encourage women back into work alongside the childcare policy?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, the aspect in general I think we have to look at, Presiding Officer, is ensuring that there is sufficient provision, good quality provision, in a flexible way that works for what parents need. And that's very important, whether it's for eligible 2s, for younger children, or indeed children who are at school. And I was very pleased to attend an extra time session in Renfrew about the work that's happening with children at school. So the point about that flexibility and the point about ensuring that childcare works for parents, particularly for women, is exceptionally important, both for the women and indeed for the child, Presiding Officer. Eradicating child poverty, as I've said, is this government's top priority, and we know it's inextricably linked with women's poverty. And we have to tackle the inequality that women experience to fulfil our mission. In this financial year, we expect to invest £517 million to deliver 3 benefits to support unpaid carers, the majority of whom are women: Carer Support Payment, which replaces Carers Allowance, and the Carers Allowance Supplement and Young Carers Grant, which are both unique to Scotland. Presiding Officer, this summer we will begin to develop an equality strategy for women and girls in partnership with the Advisory Council. This strategy will identify the gender equality goals that we will prioritise. One of the key messages from the Advisory Council has been that we need to be better at understanding and reflecting women's different needs and experiences in our policies. For example, as has already been discussed by Pam Duncan-Glancy, disabled women, also older women and minority ethnic women. Making sure we hear from a diverse range of women as we develop the strategy will help us to achieve this. The strategy will be co-designed with the Advisory Council and with the Empowering Women panel, who the Minister and I have had the pleasure of meeting and working with this year. These are a diverse group of women and girls of different ages and backgrounds whose lived experience informs and enriches the Council's work. We will publish our equality strategy for women and girls in 2026.